G'day guys, my name is Wildkard, welcome back to my channel. It's Tuesday, it's Newsday. Let's take a look at what's been happening in the world of rugby. So the Southern Hemisphere team is preparing the 2022 season for the international season. Springboks has announced a preliminary team for the first training camp for 2022. Now, there's a lot of discussions on the selections from the Springbok team, as the Springboks has, since their law change in selection criteria, allows them to select both domestic players and international based players. So this leaves Springboks with a huge pool of extremely good and talented players to select from. And there's a lot of discussions on who deserves on what spot based on the availability. So this is very, very competitive for the Springbok team. And as a result, and this is I think this is absolutely brilliant. As a result, there's going to be 3 training camps for the Springbok team. There's going to be a first training camp focused on domestic players, and then there's going to be a second training camp focused on international players, and there's going to be another third training camp for domestic player exclusively. So this kind of setup really shows the depth of the Springbok team, and it's looking quite stacked, to say the least, for the Springbok side for a really, really strong 2023 Rugby World Cup run. So the head coach, Jacques Nienaber, addressed some of these discussions that's been talked about on their selections. Due to the overabundance availability, the loose forward position is like way too many loose forwards for selection. Essentially, there's the coach talks about there's already potentially going to be 10 loose forwards that's going to be available for selection that they're considering. But for the Rugby World Cup, they're only allowed to have 5. So it's going to be a really difficult task to cut down that number to 5. And basically, he's talked about the last year's selections from the Lions tour is heavily in favor for him to be considered going into the Rugby World Cup, despite Duan Vermeulen being quite on the older side at age of 34 already. He still kind of favors him going into the Rugby World Cup. They also already, and as a result of some injuries from the Lions tour, they already brought up some newer players like Jasper Visa and this other guy, Marco van Staden. They're already like newer players start filtering through the ranks for those loose forward positions, and it's just gonna be looking super stacked, super competitive for the Springbok team. And I think it's a good thing. It's definitely going to be making Springboks more competitive. This is something that I really wanted the Wallabies to do as well, to open those doors, allowing more competition, which kind of makes your domestic players work harder as well to try to earn that Wallaby jersey, instead of just being like, hey, you play domestically, you get a free pass for the Wallabies. So it's really looking good for the Springboks. And also, this was on talks for Faf de Klerk's contract in the Springbok side. Faf de Klerk, he is currently on Sales Shark. It's looking like he's going to end his 5-season run with the Sales team, and he's going to be moving to another club. And most likely, currently talking about he's going to go to Japan, and he's most likely he was initially talked about going to the Red Hurricanes, but as a result of the shuffling in Japan, he's more likely to go into the Cannon Eagles at $1 million, like £900 a year. That is a lot of money for Faf de Klerk, and he's going to be linking up with the Japanese international number 10, Yu Tamura, for the Cannon Eagles team. So really interesting move there that could potentially be happening for probably the best halfback in the world. Next up, the Wallabies obviously is preparation for the Rugby World Cup is also underway. The Wallabies schedule for 2022 has kind of been announced, like tentatively confirmed at the moment. So they're going to be looking at finishing the season with 5 away games for the spring tour, which I love it. I love watching rugby. I love having a long spring tour season. And I think, in my opinion, the more games you can play away, the better. The Wallabies really struggled last year being away after being playing at home for too many games over almost 2 years being at home. The away game is definitely something that the team is kind of struggling with, and having a long finishing to the international season is really good for the Wallabies, especially the Rugby World Cup is in France, so all of the games are going to be away. I really want to see. I think this is a great preparation going into the World Cup. So essentially, the Wallabies schedule is going to start off with England coming into the July Test series. Dan Carter, thanks for the wave, mate. Coming to the July Test series for three round at home, and then they're going to be going away to play Argentina in for the Rugby Championship. Then they're going to come back home for 2 games against the Springboks for the Rugby Championship, and to finish off the Rugby Championship, it's going to be 1 test away, 1 test at home against the All Blacks for the Bolster Cup. Which this is a really interesting change, actually, I think, because traditionally the Bolster Cup is always the first game for the Wallabies for the Rugby Championship. They always play the All Blacks first, and then kind of maybe there's like another game later on, but the opening matches is usually against the All Blacks. But this year, they reversed it. The All Blacks, the Bolster Cup, the most important cup. For me, as an Australian, probably for some of you Kiwis don't even care about it anymore because you have it too long. Yeah, just give it back to us, mate. Just give it back to us. We'd be more than happy to hold it for you if you're sick of holding it. And so this time it's going to be finishing off 2 test series against New Zealand at the end of the Rugby Championship, which is really good. And then following that, the Spring Tour will be going away to play Italy, France, Ireland, and Wales, and then a tentative talk to play Scotland, maybe finish off the tour. That'll be really good. I mean, it's pretty much the entire 6 nations we're going to be playing this year. England at home, and then obviously we're not going to play England again whilst we're away. This is a really good finish. I really want to see that, you know, basically 6 nations away tour in the November Test series. Really good to see. So I'm very excited for that, guys. And yeah, really good news for Australian rugby. So the also good news for Australian rugby is that Samuel Kerevi, his contract's coming up in about 2 months, actually. So he's talking about with this Japanese club, he's talked about basically coming back to play in Australian rugby for long terms, and he's talked about potentially signing a team, not with the Reds that he was originally contracted to. So he could be going to, I'm guessing, Western Force. I'm hoping maybe Western Force, because they are looking at recruiting some big players and giving big enough money to players as well. So that would be really good to see if Samuel Kerevi come back and give Western Force a bolster to what they need. And Kerevi, many consider to be the best inside centre in the world at the moment due to his outstanding performance against the Springbok last year. So really good to see him come back for that needed boost to the Super Rugby franchises here at home. And also the Super Rugby results now. First up, Brumbies beats the Fijian Endura in a very technical match. I guess a technical win for the Brumbies. They overwhelmingly dominated the Fijian Enduras in the set pieces. The Endura lineouts once again struggled a lot. The hooker really need to do some more practice. Like he's really letting his team down quite a bit. And yeah, it's the result 33-12 for the Brumbies. A nice and clinical technical win for the Brumbies, to say the least. Next up, we got the Rebels beating the Western Force away in Perth. This was a really poor performance by the Western Force. The Rebels had a red card, and I think there was a yellow card as well, overlapping the red cards. So they basically were down to 13 players at one point, and the Western Force was struggling against the 13-player Rebels, and at home, to say the least. So there were some news came out of the Western Force that the head coach was sacked last week, but he's basically gonna be ending his career, ending his coaching run by the end of the season. So I thought that was really poor form for the management to sack your coach mid-season before the season has finished. So that I think that definitely has affected the team quite a lot. This was by far the worst performance by the Western Force so far this season. And yeah, 1 point loss to the Rebels, 22 points, 21 for the Rebels. And the Highlanders finally ended their losing streak, getting their first win in Super Rugby in 2022. Shows you how difficult it is in Super Rugby in New Zealand. They beat the Moana Pacifica in this game in Dunedin. This game, probably the highlight the game is that the Moana Pacifica has given away a super high amount of penalties. I think they gave away 16 or 18 penalties in one game, which is extortionately high, and that really allowed the Highlanders to just get a lot of easy territory, piggybacking a lot of those penalties to get themselves in a position to score. And Moana Pacifica, when they are not giving away penalties, really look good, to be fair. They really look good. They really look like a top tier team. It's just really those penalties letting themselves down. If they can tidy up those penalties, I'm sure they can upset quite a few Australian teams coming into the Trans-Tasman competitions. Next up, we got the most controversial game of the week, the Crusaders versus the Hurricanes in Wellington. The game finished with Crusaders winning by 3 points. The Hurricanes opted for a last-minute line-out instead of going for a draw. They had a penalty that could have kicked. Jordie Barrett had a 90% chance of kicking that. Could have kicked for 3 points for a draw to go to overtime. But Hurricanes apparently waited for the coaches to give them the instructions what to do in this situation. Instead of opting for the draw, taking it to golden points, they've decided to go for a line out. And then there was a lot of controversy from this line out. Artie Savia basically claimed that Scott Barrett played the Hurricanes player in the air. Should have been a penalty. The referee didn't see so. And the Hurricanes essentially stuffed that line. Essentially was not able to... Yeah, basically the line out was disrupted. They were not able to do anything with the line out. And the game ended ended right there with the ball not coming out of the maul. So Crusaders was able to hang on for the 3-point lead. Artie Savia calls out the referee for being really poor, but ultimately I thought this was a poor decision to not go for the 3 points. I do think that there could be some speculations as to the reason why they went for the jugular to try to go for the win at this point, because they do have a game coming up today against Moana Pacifica. So maybe the Hurricanes was thinking a drawn, prolonged extra time is not really the ideal situation. They want to be going into a game that's coming up on Tuesday. So maybe they have that in mind. They don't want to tire out their players too much to go for that decision. But it was just such a bizarre decision to make, to not opt for the draw, to take the extra time and go for a play that hasn't worked at all, essentially, for the entire second half, to say the least, for the Hurricanes. Really, really weird decision there. And then finally, we have some more talks about the Hurricanes. Jordie Barrett obviously moved to 12th position for the Hurricanes for the second game against the Crusaders. His performance definitely improved from the first week's performance against, I think it was against the Chiefs the week before. So obviously Ian Foster, Sir Fozzie was watching closely with Jordie Barrett. So far, his assessment for Jordie Barrett is at 15 still. He still thinks that Jordie Barrett's talent under the high ball and kicking game was just way too good to be wasted under 12 position, despite Jordie Barrett having played 12 previously, and also has expressed the desire to play 12, but Fozzie currently don't think 12 is the right position for Jordie Barrett. So the Chiefs played the Blues on the weekend to a awful 25 points to nil loss. This was one of the weirdest games I've ever seen. The Chiefs was not able to score despite going over the try line like 5 times, not able to score a single point. They were denied 5 times at least over from scoring a try, just literally like millimeters, inches away from scoring, and then just being denied. Knock-ons, elbow in touch, that sort of thing, right? Held up, just unbelievable stuff. I could not believe Chief did not score a single point, especially this game was played at home against the Blues. Again, there was at one point the Blues had like, I think the Blues had a red card and 2 yellow cards. There was a lot of cards given out as well against the Blues. So the Chiefs not only had home ground advantage, but they were also playing against like a 14, I think there was 13 player Blues team, and they were not able to score a single point. Like, that's unbelievable how you could play against such an overwhelming favor to your side and not able to score a single point. Although this was also a game where Beauden Barrett returned from his head knock, played spectacularly well. He really managed the game quite well, being able to set up quite a couple of those tries for the Blues. Showed really good performance by Beauden Barrett. So once again, exceptional performance of Beauden. Really managed the game well, kept the Blues in, I guess, out of the troubles when it was needed, and also took the opportunities that was given to the Blues to score points when it was available. So yeah, really, really weird game, I will say. And the Chiefs, very, very disappointing. 25 points to 0 loss to the Blues at home. Also, this was a game where Antonella Brown, I'm really heartbroken by this. Antonella Brown, he's had a shoulder injury last year, so he missed out pretty much most of the season last year. Finally returned, and he's starting to look like he's getting back into shape, getting back into the gear. I was looking forward for his performance. Injured the same shoulder again. He needs a surgery this time, and looking at 6 months out on the sideline. So this was really, really bad for the All Blacks. And yeah, hopefully he gets back soon. It's one of those things where repeated injuries on the same body part is always doesn't look good for a player. The Blues, Caleb Clark, the week before now, has been issued, I think, no, this was Tuesday actually. Last week, Tuesday, the Blues play Moana Pacifica. The Caleb Clark got issued a red card for like a late challenge in the air. He tried to charge down and then bump the player, the ball kicker, on the head while he was in the air. So he was given a red card for that, and as a result, that was a 3-match suspension. So Clark gets a 3-match suspension from his yellow card. And then the All Blacks has added 2 more coaching staff to their team. I thought this was a really, really great addition to the All Blacks side. Something that I thought the All Blacks really had a few things that they need to work with, especially in their 4-pack. So yeah, the All Blacks has really bolstered their coaching staff going into Rugby World Cup, and this is something that we could potentially see a big results coming out for the All Blacks this year. So first up, they have Andrew Strawbridge joining the All Blacks as skills consultant, and Mike Crone coming in as a mentor slash scrum coach. So basically the key here is that Strawbridge was a veteran coach for the Chiefs for when Chiefs won the Super Rugby back-to-back in 2012 and 2013 on Dave Rennie. So he's going to bring a lot of experience to the team for his coaching staff. But more importantly, the All Blacks had a Crone. He is a 16-year veteran for the All Blacks forwards coaching, and they have kind of like moving out of the kind of like shuffling out of the side 3 years ago. And as a result, the All Blacks 4-pack has lost that dominance every year. You can see every year. Last year, the All Blacks 4-pack was by far the worst All Black team 4-pack. I don't even remember. It was really, really not, really, really underwhelming. And maybe that's the reason you're having someone that has been so good for the All Blacks 4-pack being kind of just like pushed off to the sideline. So as a result, they brought him back, and he's not going to be as the scrum coach that the All Blacks desperately needed, but he's going to be working alongside the current scrum coach to really bolster that All Blacks really lackluster 4-pack in recent times. So really, really good to see that change there for the All Blacks side, and very, very promising going into the international season for the All Blacks. And then also now Fijian Endura captain Nemani Nagusa gets 4-week ban for his co-hanger tackle on a Rebels player. I think this was last week. And 4 weeks ban, longest so far in the Super Rugby season. And then we got, what is this? And then we got so there is some talks about basically Justin Marshall had a bit of rant about how the maul has become too much of a predictable play for the teams. It's due to the referees hammering down the technicalities of a maul penalties a bit too harshly, that it gives such a huge advantage for the attacking team to perform the maul, making the game really predictable. And essentially the hookers are now the highest try scorers as a result of just repeated maul tries. So I don't know if this is the right assessment. I do think that it just shows that the teams need to work better in their maul defense. I don't think, again, you can't blame the rules as the reason for the game played in a certain way. The rules has always been the same. The referees are interpreting the rules much more strictly than it used to be. And again, Justin Marshall, you can't just dial back the clock. The game has moved on. That's just the way it is. You can't dial back the clock and tell the referee to go semi-professional again, and then having, it's it's just a bit of a nonsense. I thought from Justin Marshall here. New Zealand Rugby has apologized to their women's players after a independent body review their treatment for the women's performance. The women's team essentially found that the women's team has been insufficient in support from the New Zealand Rugby. So yeah, this is looking pretty bad after there was quite a bit of a controversy as well. I think maybe 2 weeks ago where it was like an International Women's Day or something, and the All Blacks basically tweeted out like their support for women on their Twitter accounts, and then just like having absolutely not a single photo even featured on their account. And and then they try to issue an apology on like a minor All Blacks account, which was really, really poor form by the All Blacks, to be honest. The way they're managing their image is pretty poor, to be frank. And as a result, there was basically this whole thing started with talks of them having like really bad culture in the black firms management, essentially like body shaming the women there, being insensitive towards the women and favoritism. And essentially one of the players, I'm not even going to try mispronouncing her name, essentially came out and basically called out these issues. And the result, there was an independent investigation and found that some of these allegations to be true. And All Blacks, New Zealand Rugby has come out to make a formal apology. Again, there was a more incident on the field that was a little bit more ridiculous, starting to get more and more ridiculous. So there was like an accidental collision on the field where two players kind of like wasn't looking at any like each other, ran into each other, and then as a result there was a head collision, and the defending player was issued a yellow card. So the player from Leinster Tigers gets a red card for this incident. So there was a lot of talk about, again, this was an accidental incident where two players ran into each other without the ball. And maybe there's need to be a little bit of looking into these laws from World Rugby to accidental head collisions, because that's just, Ronan O'Gara came out this week, talked about how he's interested in the England coaching job after kind of talking about it the week before. So he clarified his position on wanting to coach a Six Nation side if possible. So like any Six Nation side he would be happy to coach. But currently, obviously, the England coaching job is coming up in 2023. So he's talked about his interest to coach the England side, Ronan O'Gara. Obviously, Eddie Jones is currently the England head coach. He's doing his job again in Japan as a spy. So he's been criticized doing this quite a bit. So Eddie Jones, despite being the head coach for England Rugby, during his spare time, now he goes over to Japan and coaches the Sungoliath. And this is something that he's been doing for quite a few years now. Like last year, he looked after Sungoliath. He looked after the team, and he basically coached Bowden Barrett. So this is I thought this is really smart from Eddie. He's being able to go to Japan, not directly in competition with England Rugby, but he's able to scout out a lot of those top international players from the Southern Hemisphere teams that's playing in Japan. There's a lot of South African players playing in Japan. There's a lot of Wallabies playing in Japan, and All Blacks playing in Japan. He's able to scout out a lot of those team players and being able to give himself, essentially developing his own coaching by looking at some of these players first-handedly. So it's really, really smart from Eddie. So as of now, under his coach is Samuel Kerevi and Damien McKenzie. So he's really, really smart doing this. He has been received a lot of, BS from his best friend, Sir Woodward, for doing this. But I think it's a really smart move from Eddie Jones. And obviously, the two players that we just talked about, DMAC and Samuel Kerevi, scores 27 out of 42 points on the weekend for a blowout win for the Sungoliath over the Red Hurricanes. And this is, again, Eddie Jones. I think to say that he's really, really smart is an understatement for this sort of stuff. Two of the premier players in the world under his coaching, having direct contact with him. He's going to be able to get a lot of information for the England side. So some bad news now to South Africa. A schoolboy has died due to a head injury from the weekend. And so the week before, England a England university female player, died as well the last week from rugby. As of this week, a schoolboy died in South Africa. So yeah, this is really not looking like you never really like. It's really rare for players to die on the rugby field, and suddenly there's 2 players dying on back-to-back weeks. This is really kind of, I don't know, to say unlucky to say the least. A really terrible couple of weeks for rugby. So this player was wearing a scrum cap. Very young player, 18 years of age, playing for his school. And yeah, really disappointing. So he basically got hit in the head and then died from bleeding from the brain in hospital, despite wearing a scrum cap. So yeah, I mean, that's really bad news there. And then for so again, there's some trouble coming out of the Welsh side. The Scarlet team losing again on the weekend, 49-14 Cardiff losing to Scarlet 49-14, and this Cardiff team was issued basically a letter to say that the performance was really poor, and some of this poor performance is attributed to basically the team giving a lot of players lengthy contracts during the COVID pandemic to keep them on the roster for a 25% pay cut. And that decision is starting to hurt the team at the moment, as the team is kind of like locked up with a lot of players that are underperforming. So just finishing off the rugby news now. Romain Poita, the infamous draw for the Lions tour in New Zealand 2017. He is currently going to be moving to a coaching role with Toulon after he's gonna be finished off his referee career. So yeah, that's Romain Poit, the world famous French referee, is going to become a coach for Toulon. So yeah, that's the basically the final bit of the news this week, guys. Thanks for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, let me know your thoughts on any of the news article you saw today. Really do appreciate you being here. I'll see you guys a bit later this week, and have a good weekend. Cheers. Have a good week, I guess. Cheers.